Talk about stirring up the wide receivers' hornet's nest. Eric Crocker did that. We'll talk about that on Locked On NFL Draft. Let's go.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. Welcome in. It's Locked On NFL Draft Podcast with the two best friends anybody could have. Eric Crocker, former NFL, AFL defensive back. You see him in one of the coolest garages you're ever going to see. My man, Ryan Tracy, at Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter, Rogue Analytics. I'm John Harris, football analyst, sideline reporter for the Houston Texans, also owner-operator of FootballTakeover.com. And a reminder, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $200 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. I'm going to start this show very simply put with a tweet that I happened to see on Saturday. I land from going to New York, take on the Giants, actually. And I see this tweet, and I'm just going to read the tweet. Right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Addison is the only day one receiver taken. Boutte and Jaxon were supposed to be top 15 locks. Most mocks had them going top 10. Doubt it. Now, the originator and author of that tweet is on this podcast. It's Eric Crocker. But Ryan Tracy, I'm going to start with you. What did you think when you saw that tweet from Eric Crocker about this class of wide receivers?
I thought Croc's on to something. That's what I thought. I can't say that there's only going to be one taken in the entire round when it's all said and done, because there is the combine, there is the film review. But there'll only be one in the top 15, top 20, maybe. It's Jordan Addison and a bunch of dudes as far as I'm concerned.
Here's my question. Who is the guy? Like, now, when it comes down to it, draft late April, there might be 3 or 4 guys that go first round. But I do think right now, right, you can ask 5 guys, who's the top receiver in this class? You might get 5 different answers. If you asked 10 guys, who are the round 1 receivers in this class? I think you might get 10 different answers on who the 3 or 4 receivers might be. So that led me to believe, is there a consensus guy? I think a lot of my responses are telling me there is a consensus guy, and it's actually not Jordan Addison.
Now, yeah. I saw the tweet. Now, listen, I saw the tweet, and you didn't say that. Now, this is something a lot of people will do on Twitter, is they will say there's no way or absolutely not. You didn't say that at all. And so I'll absolutely defend you on that aspect of it when people were coming at you like, he didn't say guys wouldn't be. It's just the way it's shaping out. And I think I don't want to speak for you, Eric, of course, but your point when you mentioned Jaxon and Boutte, what hit me was those are the 2 guys that people anticipated being top 15 guys. And they're not living up to it. And whether it's because things have changed at LSU and Boutte's just kind of moved back to the pack because he's just not showing the production, Jaxon just can't get on the field, or the fact that we just don't know who wide receiver 1 is. And that reminds me of a year, last year. Last year, there was Garrett Wilson. There was Chris Olave. Those 2 guys, obviously, at Penn State. There was Jahan Dotson. There was Kyle London. I put Kyle Pitts
Drake London.
And Drake London together. There's Drake London. But Drake London got hurt halfway through the year. So, yeah, Drake London. So we didn't know how he's going to test. You had the 2 Ohio State guys. Which one was better? And so there was this kind of quandary of, well, what do we do? And in the end, there was, I think, one top 10 receiver, and that was Drake London. Then there was a glut that came after that with Jameson Williams. Olave gets drafted in that little spot from 10 to 17, I think. And Jahan Dotson goes. I think we're going to end up
and Garrett Wilson.
A decent number of receivers end up going in the first round. But I think it's going to be pretty similar. Yeah, and Garrett Wilson. I think we're going to see it be very similar to last year. I think the first 8 to 10 teams are going to focus on very distinct needs that are not wide receiver, quarterback needs for a lot of teams, and then there's going to be a team that jumps up and says, okay, we really got to push for our offense. We got to go up and get a wide receiver. And so it's, to me, I don't think, Eric, you were wrong. I just think it's a really good talking point to jump off with. Where are we with these receivers? Which guy is number one? Is it Jordan Addison and there's nobody else? Or do we think Quentin Johnston is a guy that could be in that mix? And it's really those two and everybody else.
I think we've gotten a little spoiled in recent years with knowing exactly who the top 1, 2, or 3 receivers in the class were. And then you were able to kind of build off of that. But right now, if I was to ask you, well, guys, who are the guys? Again, kind of going back to what I said earlier, it's all over the place. So that kind of leads me to believe this class might be a little bit more on the mid side where you have guys that are good. Because even if you go back last year, you might have a different order as it pertains to the top 5 guys. But it felt like 5 guys are going first round, right? Like you just knew, okay, Drake London, Jameson Williams, even with an ACL, you thought maybe Williamson might go a little bit later in the first round, but he still felt like, no, he's going to be a first-round receiver. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, like you could just bet, even at this point in the year, because we haven't gotten to the draft process right now. And again, we'll talk about some of these guys in depth who will be the guys that we think go first round. But last year, you had this feeling that although you might not have a consensus wide receiver 1, you knew who was going first round. This year, I literally have no idea. And maybe we'll have more of an idea when the combine comes, draft prep, all that stuff. But even then, I still feel like you should have some feeling as of now. And some of the names people were throwing at me, it's like, man, okay, Downs. I like Downs at UNC. Is he just a slot? I know he could play on the outside. He's a little bit undersized. I do like the twitch. I like the suddenness. I like change of direction. There's things I like. The production he had last week. There are things I like about some of these guys, but because you like some of these things, does that make them, in the eyes of scouts, oh, this is a first-round receiver? I think that's going to be the big question.
And the other thing that has to marry up are what teams have needs. So when we get back, we're going to look at, I'm going to throw 5 to 7 guys at both of you, and you guys tell me where you think, if the draft were today, where those guys would go. You have to project a little bit as to what their speed and height and all that kind of stuff is, all their assets are, and we'll project and see which teams need receiver as it sits right now. I could think of one in the same hotel with me right now that might need a receiver in the first round. We'll talk about that. And later we'll talk about the teams that need some receivers as well. But I want to talk to you about something special this holiday. Find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from, when you go to Total Wine & More, you get lost. Like, where am I going to go? What do I want to find? And everybody likes their favorite single barrel bourbon or the perfect gift for everyone on your list with something from a friendly guide. And all with the confidence of knowing you found something special for the absolute lowest price. Find what you love what you find, only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com. TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly. Be 21. All of us on this podcast are definitely 21. And we love this podcast. We thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Okay, guys, I'm going to pitch this question to you this way. There will be 3 wide receivers guaranteed in the first round in 2023. 3 in the first round. Ryan Tracy, you go first. 3 wide receivers are going to go in the first round. That's a guarantee. That actually kind of feels low. It should be more, but I'm going to say 3. If you were to say your 3 today, which 3 do you think it will be in the first round?
It's pretty clear. There's questions about everything, whether it's injury or playtime or whatever. To me, it's Addison, Quentin Johnston, TCU, Jalen Hyatt, Tennessee. You got to pick your flavor, but those are the three that I think you can confidently project into the first round right now.
Yeah, when you watch Jalen Hyatt and you see where he excels at, it's definitely been more so the big ball, vertically pushing down the field. Now, my questions are, could he do that from, facing pure man? Because a lot of what he gets right now is off coverage, especially on switch releases. I mean, if you watch Tennessee's offense, I feel like their whole offense is predicated off of switch releases, basically meaning you have two receivers to one side. At the snap, they kind of switch and change their kind of leverage. And then he pushes upfield, and out in space, you have a guy who's at a disadvantage as it pertains to being able to cover a speedster and a long strider. So Jalen Hyatt, a guy who definitely has straight line speed, once he's pushing at you and he has a two-way go, it's extremely difficult to guard him from that standpoint. Is that enough? Just that trait right in itself, is that enough? And that's how he's been winning, right? You watch him against Alabama. You watch some of these other ones. Earlier, and right now, as we're recording this, is Saturday. Earlier Saturday morning, you watch him score a touchdown. Switch release, wheel route, wide open, catches the ball, runs in for a touchdown. Never was contested. That's not going to be the case at the NFL level. At the NFL level, they're going to play man. They're gonna switch off of those things. They're going to banjo those. So it's going to be a little bit harder to get that same look. Is he still going to have the same level of success? So that would be my only pushback on Jalen Hyatt, who I think is a terrific prospect, but as his skill set pertains, right? When you think of a receiver skill set, winning versus man coverage, getting in and out of his breaks, working the top of his routes, being able to separate downfield, which we've identified he does that extremely well. But what about the other things? Can he win outside? Those are all still questions that I have for him as it pertains as an overall prospect.
Now, John, are you saying, or are you hearing Eric say what I think he's saying, that Jalen Hyatt has to be a slot?
Well, I'm not saying that he has to be a slot, but I do think right now the way that he has won, him being in the slot helps him a ton with how they've kind of deployed him. Now, I've been not wrong, but maybe misdiagnosed this before when watching the Ohio State receivers a couple years ago. You had Paris Campbell, you had Terry McLaurin. And I was very unsure with how their games would translate to the NFL because there were just a lot of crossers. And we saw Dwayne Haskins, RIP Dwayne Haskins, have a huge year. He threw like 50 touchdowns. And if you watch him, a lot of run after catch with just crossers from McLaurin. Deep, he throw into a spot. McLaurin would run underneath it. And you don't see a lot of that. Can he beat man? Can he just win pure straight man? Can he run routes? Well, Terry McLaurin clearly hasn't had an issue with that at the NFL level. So I don't want to overvalue that type of skill set, but I will say, again, it's just something you have to project a little bit more and just say, oh, man, he's a long strider. He runs fast. I think his game will translate. And then as he goes through the process, you watch him at the Senior Bowl run routes because that's where they're going to really challenge him with his route running. At his pro day, being able to throttle down at the top of routes. Can he do those things? Can he get in and out of breaks? Can he change direction extremely well? Probably more film we watch, we can identify that, but also throughout that process, that's something that they'll definitely be able to identify.
Absolutely. One of the things that I think is happening in college football too is that you're seeing a lot of guys that will project to be outside receivers in the NFL that are playing in college in the slot because they're seeing so much quarters. And so that's putting an inside wide receiver a lot of times. If you're running four verts or different kind, whatever they're trying to do, you're getting a safety sometimes matched up on those really fast receivers. A.J. Brown, I think, played almost 100% of the time at Ole Miss in the slot. Justin Jefferson played, I think, 100% of the time in the slot. And I think you're seeing it more. Even Treylon Burks, when he was at Arkansas, played a lot in the slot. And that is one of the parts of that Art Briles offense that they're going to play that guy in the slot where they think they can get a speed matchup. I think Hyatt's going to end up going in the first round because his speed is going to be too much. There's going to be a playoff team down at the bottom of the first round that says, you know what, we're not letting this guy go by us. We've got to have this guy. I mean, say the Dallas Cowboys. They got CeeDee Lamb. They were really interested in Brandon Cooks. Apparently, they made a really not a big offer. I don't know what the offer was, but they were hot on Brandon Cooks. So they're going to be looking for wide receivers. If you put a guy like Jalen Hyatt in with CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, and you put that speed in there, he can play in the slot. He can get some of those matchups. And so I think Hyatt's going to be very, very interesting in this draft process. But to me, I think slam dunks in the first round, if we use that term. I think Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, I think they're definitely slam dunks. There are teams in the top 10 that absolutely need receivers. Some teams might draft twice in the top 10 and will need a receiver. So I think those are the three guys I would say. To me, the most interesting aspect of it becomes JSN, if he can get healthy, and then what he decides to do. And then if Kayshon Boutte shows anything over the next, how many ever games to make us think, yeah, that guy, we thought of him as a wide receiver one, but it just hasn't come together. So if I had to make it three, I think those would be the three guys. And I do think Eric's right. I think the pushback on Hyatt will be, okay, can he do it? Can he get off press on the outside? He got a lot of this on the slot, but we've seen a lot of those guys from the slot transition to the NFL and do some good things as outside wide receivers. But I agree with what Eric's the genesis of Eric's tweet, and that is who we thought was going to be there is not there. And I don't think that the guys that will go in the first round, you can go, oh, yeah, they're absolutes. There's no Jamar Chase in this draft to go, yeah, even though he didn't play a year.
Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith.
Doubt. There's not that guy. But I do think the depth, those felt like slam dunks in the first round for sure. This feels like there's a wide pool of wide receivers to pick from, so that teams are going to say, hey, look, we can get one of these other guys. We can get a Rashee Rice in the second round from out of SMU. From that perspective, it's going to be pretty interesting to see the number of wide receivers that end up going in this first round. And as it pertains to that, there's got to be need. So which teams need receiver? We'll talk about that next. But I get to talk to you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is so much fun. It's daily fantasy made easy. It goes like this. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You don't compete against other people. You just compete against the projection, whatever the projection is. For example, you got Josh Allen potentially playing on Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. Oh, we think Josh is going to throw for 217 yards. That's a projection, more or less. It's that simple. You do that 4 or 5 other times, and you've got your list of daily fantasy made easy at prizepicks.com. And you can pick the sport. It doesn't matter. College basketball started for both men's and women's. You want to know cricket? I mean, that's up to you, but you could do it. Anything you want entries are made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. You deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. You deposit $50,000, Prize Picks will give you $100. But that's still a lot better than zero. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, guys, as it sits right now, there are 5 teams that won't be drafting in the first round. New Orleans, Rams, Denver, Cleveland. Miami forfeits a pick, but I think Miami's got another pick somewhere. Miami's got a pick. I can't remember if Miami got the San Francisco pick. Is that right? Which I think
Miami does have the 49ers pick.
Yes. So if you eliminate those teams, what goes with how many receivers will go in the first round, how many are talented enough to go in the first round, how many teams have a need in the first round. So I'm going to start with our 3 teams. Do our 3 teams need a wide receiver? Eric, 49ers, do they need a wide receiver?
I don't foresee the 49ers taking a receiver even if they had a first-round pick. You're talking about a team that just locked up Deebo Samuel for the long haul. You also have Brandon Ayuk, who was a first-round pick, so you have a 5th-year option on him. So I don't think there's a rush for the 49ers to go and get a receiver, whether it's the first round or even second round. So, 49ers, I think they'd be off the hook for being able to, or coming up and taking a receiver in the first round.
Ryan, Chiefs, sitting right now, bottom 4, 29 through 32. Would it make sense for the Chiefs to look at a receiver at that late in the draft?
When it comes to wide receivers, the Chiefs are like 7-Eleven. They might not always be doing business, but they're always open. There could be something at any time, right? They need tackle. They need edge rusher. Those have to be the predominant needs, right? But depending on how the way it all falls out, they're always looking to add weapons for Patrick Mahomes. Every move they ever make in any kind of way at the wide receiver position is about giving more firepower to QB1. That will never change. So I can't say that they won't. It's not the top priority, but it's certainly in the mix.
Okay. My team, the Texans, yes. There's definitely a need for an offensive game changer, whether that's wide receiver, running back hybrid, whatever. There's definitely somewhere there. So here are the top 10 teams as it sits right now in the draft. Houston, I want you to – which team or teams strike you as wide receivers a high priority for them? Houston, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Carolina, Philly, Arizona, Jacksonville, Chicago, Green Bay. That's the top 10 teams. How many of those teams, Eric, do you think wide receiver is a high priority for that particular team?
Houston, 100% right now. Again, eventually you'll have John Mechie coming back, but you also have the wide receiver one who wants out. Now, there are other receivers, Nico Collins, and we'll see how he kind of develops, but I would say that is a team that will potentially be looking for a receiver to draft and draft right away, or at least within the first 2 rounds. Another team, Chicago. They just traded for Chase Claypool. We'll see how that kind of works out, spending the second-round pick to bring him in. They also like Mooney. I like him. Is Mooney or Claypool that wide receiver one, or are you looking at more of a wide receiver by committee type thing? I do believe that you need to get that guy for Justin Fields, and they haven't done that quite yet. What were some other names that teams you mentioned?
Here are a couple other ones to consider. Jacksonville.
They just spent a ton of money on a few receivers, and I like what they did there. I think their issues right now is just let your quarterback continue to grow and develop. You have some weapons that you brought in who I feel like are playmakers, and we'll see how they continue to grow with him. They got a running back that they can lean on and a pass catcher out of one of their running backs, Travis Etienne. So I don't know for sure if they would be like, all right, yeah, the winning recipe right now is to go get a receiver. Now, I say all that, and I remember the Cincinnati Bengals a couple years ago when they drafted Jamar Chase. They had all kind of holes on the defense, on the offensive line. I didn't think receiver was necessarily a huge need. They did have Tyler Boyd. They did have T. Higgins, and they said, we do not care. We are going out and getting Jamar Chase. Now, the only issue with that is there are no Jamar Chases in this class, so I don't see them going out and doing something like that.
They're not the only ones. Yes, you can make all the moves you want to make in season. The trade for Claypool, I don't think eliminates the Steelers at all. The Lions can always use help. The Panthers, I think, are in a crossroads. They have multiple issues. Can they find a quarterback they can move forward with? No matter who it is, they need more weapons. They need to be able to get the ball out quickly and get that done. Packers, I don't even know where to start with them. Can Dobbs turn into a guy that can be solid for them? I don't know that they know yet. Watson obviously has not become the splash that we thought he would be. I could see them back in the market. Obviously, the Arizona Cardinals, you need to give Kyler as many weapons as you can. He can bring you back in a game, but he's got to have the help, so I can see them going that direction as well. You already mentioned Chicago, and I think the mystery around Allen Robinson in L.A. drives me insane. So, Rams, go get somebody else to put with Cooper Kupp and see what happens.
Yeah, that's why I look at this list of teams, and I think there are a lot of them that maybe wide receiver is not the number one need, but wide receiver is absolutely a need. Jacksonville is the one that I think about because, to your point, Eric, they went out and spent a lot of money on Christian Kirk, and they've already got Marvin Jones. They got a bunch of number twos and maybe a really good number three, but I don't think they have a number one. But depending on where Jacksonville falls, and I think Jacksonville could win a few more games, so they might fall middle of the pack. If they're sitting there at 13, 14, 15, hey, maybe Jordan Addison makes some sense for them if they're able to do that. So it's going to be really interesting, this draft, as it pertains to receivers, because of the teams, because a lot of them, I mean, like you said, we could be sitting there with pick number 1, 2, 3, and then whatever Cleveland's pick ends up being, and be able to have our pick at wide receiver, which would be kind of nice to see what they could add to Nico Collins, this wide receiver core in Houston. So it's definitely going to be a position worth watching. And I got to thank Eric Crocker for his tweet that really kicked off this show, talking about wide receivers.
Wait, hold on, John. I can't let you off the hook. We've done all that talking about this receiver class and first-round receivers and whatnot. Let's say the Houston Texans are going to draft one of these receivers. Which receiver are you taking?
Andre Johnson. And that's your podcast. No, it's the interesting part of it is because with Nico we have size, and Nico's got some juice too, and so maybe you don't need that 6'4" tall drink of water like Quentin Johnston is. Maybe you need the all-round guy, 6'1", 6 foot, 180 that just gets open all over the field like Jordan Addison does. I would feel more comfortable. I'd feel comfortable with either one of them, to be honest. But my view of the Texans is always jaded a little bit by Will Fuller, because Will Fuller changed things on the field. I mean, it was just incredible. And so I just am enamored by Jalen Hyatt. And if Fuller could have stayed healthy, it would have been incredible what he could have done. He just couldn't stay healthy. But I think at that point, Jordan Addison would, to me, make the most sense. If you put Addison with Mechie, Nico, depending on what they're doing with Brandon or what happens with Brandon. But if you went Mechie, Nico, and Jordan Addison, and then you've got a quarterback thrown to them, now all of a sudden it starts to be pretty exciting with Dameon Pierce carrying the ball. So, I'm always, and you guys know how I am. You build on the lines. You build offense, defensive line. I could get a wide receiver later, but I don't think you could pass on a truly complete receiver like Jordan Addison. So if that guy's available, depending on where we fall in the draft with that second pick, especially the Cleveland's pick, if Jordan Addison is there, I'm firing on it all day, every day. Young receiver, bring him in, and all of a sudden you start having something with Mechie coming back. It could be really fun. And then you got to figure out the quarterback situation. But that is for a different podcast down the road. Gentlemen, this is a blast talking receivers. Eric, hell of a tweet. Ryan, excellent job tonight, as always. We appreciate you guys for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Boys, it was fun. We'll be back this week with plenty more. We'll break down the rookies over the weekend in the NFL. We'll have another Friday night draft. Hopefully you enjoyed the redraft of 2018. That was a blast to do. So we'll have more of that this week right here on Locked On NFL Draft. For Eric, for Ryan, I'm John. We'll see you next time. And as always, let's go.